I'd like to call our panelists up to the front. We were just waiting on chairs. If our panelists could come up. I'd like to thank DaVinci International Film Festival for this opportunity and this space for a very important topic. And I'd also like to thank AMC Theaters as well. And we'll get started with our panel. We're going to be discussing the globalization of South Asian content with some industry veterans, which I'm proud to call my friends. Testing. Testing. Andrea, this one doesn't work.
Okay.
Also like to thank Andrea, who is a program director, and she's been a lifesaver. So my name is Arthi Misro. As many of you know, I'd like to again thank you for coming and supporting the festival, our voices, these films, and this panel. So I'm just going to ask the panelists to quickly introduce themselves, and also there is information about them in more detail on our website too.
Hello everyone. Sorry. My name is Arunima Teju. I am born and raised in Sri Lanka, and my family moved to Santa Barbara in 1996. Since then, we live in Santa Barbara, and I'm a career banker, but I am also the founder and the president of the Ceylon International Film Festival, and I have done productions, and I'm very honored to be here and be part of this panel. Thank you.
Awesome. Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'm Reema. I'm originally from Mumbai. I moved to Los Angeles about 3 years ago. I've been in the entertainment industry about 18 years now. I usually don't say that, it makes me sound really old, but for context, I think this is a safe space. So it's been about 18 years I've been in the industry as a creative director, as an executive producer. I've worked on multiple formats like Fear Factor, Big Brother, Next Top Model, worked with Netflix, Paramount, and a couple of other production houses. So it's really good to be here. I'm excited. These are some really amazing films, Arsi. Thank you for having us, and excited to be on this panel.
Hi, my name is Radha Mehta. I am a writer-director. My previous career, I was actually a civil engineer, so I had gotten into filmmaking later in life, and I have a directing MFA from American Film Institute. But my work span across both documentary as well as narrative, and I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you.
My name is Rajal Petroda. I am a producer, primarily documentaries, but do some narrative work as well. I've been producing for the last 10 years, and before that I worked on the marketing and distribution side for films, and actually started my career in India working on international marketing and distribution for the Indian film business.
Thank you for the introduction. So we can also talk about the films a little bit. From a programming perspective, I actually ideally wanted to find more films that reflect the diaspora. With 1 billion of us in South Asia and then many of us all over the world, there's bound to be other stories, but we also wanted to find the strongest films. So a couple of these films are from Pakistan, and then we have the films also from India. However, the dialects are different. India is known, and South Asia is known to have hundreds of different dialects. So you saw that tonight, or this evening. I wanted to ask and open it up to the panel, because you all are veterans, so you've seen a lot of changes in South Asian content, and I would say even to open it up in international content. Just from the top of your head, why do you think that film, TV, media from South Asia has become so popular. And I was just thinking, I, being a daughter of immigrants, grew up on Bollywood films. So I also feel like that made an impact on me. But I'd like to open it up to the panel. Testing.
Well, I think, well, as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and I think we all, the South Asian, we have very unique stories to tell, and our struggles, and also our culture. So I grew up watching Bollywood, although in Sri Lanka, and still we love it. And also when we see each stories, like for us too, like when we get our films pretty much all over the world, especially from our diaspora as well, it's a storytelling, and how they tell a story, it's very unique, and also it brings a different perspective as well. And especially like looking at these stories today, the struggle for women, and especially in South Asia, it's still going on, and I think we are kind of our generation kind of breaking those barriers right now, but at the same time it's still going on. So getting those voices out and bringing those stories for the awareness, it's very important. So I think that's why most of the women directors are coming out now, bringing their stories. So it's a very interesting time.
Yes. That's so true. I want to kind of catch on what she said as well. I think culture in India in general is our currency, right? I feel like we are in such a diverse country that if you go from like one state to the other, you don't just have a change in terms of food, there's a change in terms of language, there's a change in terms of the god they pray to, there's a change in terms of the outfit. So I feel like there's so much culture and so much story to be told, and it comes from history. I think if you go back and just kind of read on like how deep and diverse the history is, it really has an impact on it really has an impact on the stories we're telling today, and I feel that it's traveling globally because of that, and that's making an impact not just on like the viewers who are watching this content. It's like everyone who is engaging with that content is now feeling like they want to be a part of it in some way, they want to contribute to it in some way. It's interesting because I also feel like nowadays when I go to an Indian restaurant, I see so many more diverse people, and I'm like, it's amazing how we're catching on to like everybody, and it starts with small things, it starts with food, it starts with storytelling, and then it kind of accelerates into the other things. But I feel like we come in with a lot of culture inherently, and a lot of fearlessness and resilience, and I think that kind of transcends into the stories that we're telling today.
Yeah, so I also grew up on watching Bollywood films, but I was born and raised here in America. So my storytelling comes from a perspective of an American, born to immigrant parents. I am happy that I see like South Asian stories becoming more popular, but in my humble opinion, I don't think that they're getting the attention that we would love for them to get to in terms of mainstream media, because a lot of what I do consume here in America is all this mainstream media that we see. And the films that we saw earlier, just a bit ago, the first two films were quite sad, right? And that is a sad reality that we do have within our South Asian culture and diaspora, and I'm so glad that those films are getting made. But when you study Indian cinema or South Asian cinema, and then the movies that are coming out of here in America or in Europe, there's very different sensibilities in the way those films are made. I think you can kind of tell the first two films have a little bit of, if you know Bollywood cinema, there's a little bit of that kind of melodramatic feel to it. And I think it's, for us, at least for me, as someone that's been raised here, I think that we're trying to study what makes Indian or South Asian cinema here more popular, and a lot of it is having to appease to these, American sensibilities, and specifically choosing cast that are non-South Asian in order for us to be heard. And that's what I keep hearing from the pitches that we go into for these major studios. So there's a lot of work to be done. So I am very happy. I mean, there's a lot of resilience that we experience and we go through in terms of like getting our stories made. But there needs to be a lot more support, and that's what we're really, really trying for. And so I'm hoping that within the next year, 10 years, that you do see more of our stories, because it's so rich in culture and it's so rooted in all the things of human conditions that we all experience universally, that if we just got more support, I think that it could go a long way in terms of feeling that universality across all cultures.
I don't know if I have too much more to add, but I think that for me, what was interesting about seeing these films and thinking about your question, Arti, is really this idea of like thematic resonance. I think that what's happening more and more is what's coming out of India or South Asia are films. This isn't working.
They're going in and out, so.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you just fine.
That's fine,
Yeah.
perfect.
I think a lot of these films.
No, use the mic.
Okay, so use it. Sure. I think a lot of these films speak to issues that are very much universal issues, and I think that's what Radha was just touching on is, yes, we saw films about the plight of women and girls, and even though it may not be the same in countries all over the world, that is something that many women and girls can identify with. We saw a film about the trans community, which is something the trans community globally can hopefully identify with. And so I think that these films are now touching on themes beyond things that maybe feel hyper-local to India and that can translate to other marginalized communities or other communities globally. And I think that's part of the reason why some of these films are kind of, being seen outside of India now, which I think is great. And I would echo Radha's point that I think we still have a very long way to go, because getting things like this made is still so difficult.
Thanks, Rajal. Actually wanted to ask Rajal, highlight Rajal's background, where she lived in India for 3 years, right? And someone who introduced us years ago, I feel like Rajal is a kind of like a pioneer and a trailblazer with trying to be a bridge. So I'm really humbled to be here with her, because that's what I've been trying to do for most of my career. Could you talk a little bit about your work there? And I'm curious to know what you've seen from, like, as far as, I know it's kind of an open-ended, like a broad question. What, I guess, improvements that you may have seen in development?
For sure. So I started my career in film working in India, and I had gone for 2 weeks for a friend's wedding, and I ended up staying for 3 years, which didn't go over very well with my family, but another story for another time. So I basically worked on international marketing and distribution for the industry in general. And so at that point, this was like the early 2000s, India didn't have a presence at the Cannes Film Festival. So I had worked on setting up the first Cannes Pavilion for India. India didn't take producers or directors, groups, delegations to international film markets. And so I worked on putting some of that infrastructure in place for the industry. And I think that was really important because people in India weren't seeing how business was being done on the other side. They weren't advocating for themselves for co-production treaties or distribution possibilities. And so in a way, I'm hoping some of those seeds over the last few years have grown a bit. I mean, I think it's hard to know how and what's happened, but I think that, the India Pavilion is still a feature at Cannes. I think that, these things take so much time, and I think that having, starting a presence like that and growing it is what helps these films get seen in other communities, helps these films get seen around the world, helps distributors and sales agents and investors come to the table, because you're creating a larger presence, not just for one film, but for a kind of slate of films, for a market of films, and you're showing that there's an audience for these films. And I think that a lot of Indian films now are, getting success at film festivals, which is great. And so I think just like these things are a slow build, but I think that they're, kind of helping the industry in general open up to international audiences.
Thanks, Rajal, so much for that amazing answer. Speaking of Cannes Film Festival, we've seen some incredible directors coming out of India being awarded top, for best film from actually Cannes Film Festival and Venice Film Festival, and it just makes me so proud. And so speaking of directors, I'd like to ask Radha, I actually saw Radha's AFI thesis film last year. I was touched by all of her films. She directed 3 shorts. We talked a little bit about the universality of our stories and addressing taboo subjects. And what touched me about Radha's thesis film is that she touched on mental health, which we don't talk about in Indian and South Asian families. It's very difficult to talk about it with families and parents and things like that. I wanted to ask Radha, because you have to see her work. But I wanted to ask Radha about, tell us a little bit about your thesis film, and tell us, sort of the motivation behind it. How did you conceptualize it? And if you'd like to touch upon the other 2 films, which are also taboo subjects, and how well received they have been, which this universality of the story, so to speak. Yeah, please.
So I myself am hard of hearing, so that's why it's like, I just wanted to make sure that everyone here feels what we're saying is accessible. But yeah, so, it's funny to say that I did a thesis film just, 2 years ago, when I'm now a mother of 2, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I had a whole other career, which, I felt I was pretty good at before getting into this career. But the thing that, one of the things that we're always told is, pull from your own truth and your own lived experiences. And for that, I'm grateful that I've had a lot of lived experiences in various chapters in my life. And one of that was, caring and loving a man who was bipolar, and also a South Asian man. And within our culture, we don't talk about those things at all. And I was so ill-equipped on how to navigate that with him, and he was ill-equipped as well, even though it had been in his family. And so then I poured, the inspiration of that journey into a thesis film. That was about this free fall between this husband and wife, and the wife is hard of hearing, and they have a son, and it kind of delves into how the whole family is affected by not being able to address this taboo topic that needs to be talked about in our culture, especially here in America, when we feel these certain set of expectations of the model minority myth, that we have to be perfect, we have to go above and beyond in order to be recognized and to be able to sustain a life here in America. And then we deal with the extra pressure within our South Asian culture that if we don't become the doctor, engineer, or lawyer, then we should be ashamed of ourselves. And so I just want to, through my storytelling and my voice as a filmmaker, I just really want to slowly dismantle some of those taboos and just open up the conversation. And I'm so grateful that Aarti resonated with it, because when I did go into film festivals and I had won many awards, it was amazing how it was able to connect with people beyond our South Asian diaspora, that it's actually very common in other cultures as well when we don't talk about these things that are hurting us inside. And so I just find simple stories that I could be able to talk on mental health specifically, but also women empowerment. I think that a lot of times mental health can lead to challenges of domestic abuse and things like that. And it's really just trying to blow open that cover and be able to have these really intimate conversations within our community and beyond, so that we can have more empathy towards one another and care for one another and not judge. But yeah, that's kind of like the source of the films that I make, and it's a journey, no doubt, as I'm learning and discovering more about myself through the process. So.
Thank you for sharing that, Radha. I'd like to switch it up a little bit and talk more about globalization and the topic of AI and streaming. And I've noticed over the years, the last decade or so or more, where studios and streaming companies have started operations in India and South Asia. Do you think that this helps or hurts our stories, our communities? What's your take on that? As far as like, any interesting observations? Which I'm always reading the trades, and looking at new companies coming up. Anything that you could share, perhaps, with just generally speaking, the richness of our content is getting more accessibility, but for good or for bad?
Yeah, actually, the way I say it is, so we have a lot of, let me first back actually. Lot of Sri Lankan movies have not been out. So in 2021 with the pandemic, as a banker, I saw how much the studio struggles here. So I reached out to Sri Lanka and they were struggling quite a bit. And also like during that time period, we was home watching Netflix. And there was not a Sri Lankan movie on there. So I had quite a bit of conversation with Sri Lankan Film Corporation and the industry experts, and they have been trying to get our movies to Netflix, and they all failed. So that is when I first started actually as a Sri Lankan. I wanted to see like more, there's so many things came up, like there's not enough Sri Lankans are watching movies or whatever, they're like, so many excuses I got. And then from there I decided, okay, how can we promote Sri Lankan cinema? So that's when I started the film festival, to bring the Sri Lankan cinema to USA and create a bridge between, I call it actually create a bridge from one paradise to another. I live in Santa Barbara, so that's why I started at this film festival in Santa Barbara in 2021. And at that time, and also our jury is pretty much a lot of non-Sri Lankans as well. So they were amazed by our production. They were amazed by our stories, the storytelling, the production values, and how we, the ability to tell a story. Because until at that point, our movies were being rotating among our diaspora. That's about it. So now with that, we are going for the 4th annual event, and now we have become more and more, and my next goal is actually I really want to congratulate, and I want to take your guys' expertise too. And I mean, you mentioned that now the Cannes Film Festival going to there, and Sri Lanka actually we just screened Gehanulamai at the Cannes Film Festival. So one made in 1978. So this is my goal is to bring the Sri Lankan cinema to global, and it is high time for us to come to that where we need to be to, and where we have stories, we have productions, quality, and we have everything that but not enough opportunities for us to get there. So that's where I came in and my team came in and let's do something. So I think globalization is great. We have a lot of stories. Like I mentioned, there's a story within everybody. And the storytelling and the way that everybody tells a story is different. And I believe that as a mother and I have a daughter too, watching these kind of movies is very heartbreaking. And at the same time, we do have stories that we can bring the transgender movie. It was really great. And we have stories like that. And also we want to empower the women that bring your story, like that. Be an advocate, be a leader, and so these are the things I would like to bring it to, get it out from Sri Lanka to the West and showcase our stories.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that. I think AI is definitely the hot topic, so yeah, I definitely want to touch on it. So we have a company, it's called Starseed Studios, and we are heavily into like AI films, augmented reality, virtual reality experiences. So when it comes to just filmmaking in general, I feel like, and I see it from a very positive lens, I feel like artificial intelligence is just enabling us to be better versions of ourselves, more extraordinary, more out there, more expressive. I do see that there is certain directors, certain cinematographers, of course, that are going to be affected by what's happening and the way AI is moving, but it's not going anywhere. We are at a time where we have to embrace it and really use it to our strength to tell even more powerful stories. And that's where I think the difference is when it comes to being able to use technology for your benefit versus just using technology to, create something that's going to create a reaction. So I feel like that's where the difference is, and people who are going to be able to use AI and to use technology to create stories that are even more impactful and can be kind of put out in the global market is where the future really is. And I see that growing only by the minute. I don't think that at any point we are going to be able to, take any time back. So I see that as an individual who is kind of coming from that lens, I feel like every day when I use these apps, it's making me more and more, stronger in terms of how I can see and visualize those frames and how I can tell those stories as a director. And that's something that is just really cool because we never had that, You had to go back to, a set designer to create a set designer. You had to go back to a storyboarder to create a storyboard. You can now do that if you're able to use these apps. And I feel like it's so important to embrace it, especially with directors when it comes to not being able to spend that kind of money, saving on the production costs. It's really helpful to be able to actually utilize these resources to create magic. And that's where I see the future is, and that's where I see the stories are going to travel.
I have a different opinion.
I know. That's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm like not always agreeing. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt AI is an incredible resource to use as a tool, and especially as an entry point for people that don't necessarily have access to resources, including money. I think where it gets really dicey and really dangerous is once it starts replacing human talent. And I pray to God that yeah, I mean, I think that I pray to God that that AI doesn't get so damn good that we're actually wondering if we're actually looking at a human versus an AI person, because it's very easy right now when you look at an AI actor, the eyes are never, the eye line is never matching where the camera is. It's always it's moving in different directions. So then that's like the dead giveaway. But we have to embrace AI, no doubt, because we can't, if we're going to be part of the resistance camp, then we're going to be left behind. But I think it's in our power to make sure that we're not replacing human talent, because if you are part of the union or if you're part of, a production set or whatnot, whatever powers there may be, please do your best to recognize that human talent is where the true, authentic feelings and emotion and empathy come from. It's not going to come from a machine. And I think that that's up to us to make sure that we preserve that as best as possible.
I am unfortunately in major denial about AI, so I won't speak to that part of your question, but I will speak to the, is this good, is this bad piece around the streamers and the picking up of kind of Indian content. And personally, yeah, I'm going to have to agree and think that it's a great thing. I think it creates more opportunities for more content, and again, it's just like a snowball effect. And I think the streamers are realizing that there is an appetite for these stories, that these stories do travel, and I feel like, yeah, the market in India itself is huge, and so it obviously makes sense just from a financial perspective. I mean, it is the film business after all, to be in India and to open offices in India, and I think that market coupled with the South Asian diaspora, that's a huge global market. And so I feel like the shift that's happened is that these stories, don't seem as risky for streamers, but they do provide them with the return that they're looking for. And, I think it's a double-edged sword because there's a lot that's getting made, which is great. I do think that there's a lot more that does need to get made, and there's a lot of nuance in what's getting funded and what's not and how, and I think that's kind of the next piece of the puzzle to crack.
Thanks, Raja. So I'm going to shift it up a little bit again, because I feel like there's a lot of topics to talk about. so there's an explosion of South Asian writers, right? And I've been trying to wrap my head around it because there are thousands of books written by South Asian writers that are they're writing about the world basically. We have Triple Larry, for example, whose Unaccustomed Earth apparently is getting made into a TV show. This is a question that I wanted to ask Radha because she actually directed a scene or scenes in Mumbai, right? You were in India this year.
Yeah. No, but it was here in LA.
Oh, it was in LA?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us about that experience because I'm also there. I know there was somebody in India who was helping filmmakers get the rights to books. So I just wanted to tap on that because I don't know if people are aware of this explosion. There was actually this huge South Asian book writer conference in the Bay Area, and it was sold out, which was a few weeks ago. I couldn't attend, unfortunately, but it's a yearly thing, and it's another phenomenon that's been going on. I would love to know how because I know Elka too. What was your experience there, and are you going to be working with her in the future?
Yeah, so I think to first answer your question about an explosion of South Asian writers, I think the fact that there's been these accessible models of self-publishing has really allowed and empowered a lot of South Asian people to write their own stories and just get it out there. And then thanks to this wonderful system of checks and balances of actual public liking things, once the public sees things, if they're drawn to something, then that's what creates more traction for more South Asian writers to get their stories out there. As opposed to gatekeepers such as these major publishing houses. So I was hired to direct and create a few scenes from this best-selling author, Alka Joshi. She had a new book that was coming out, and she wanted to try something different from a marketing perspective. So she had me adapt a few scenes from her book and then create that. And so I cheated a part of LA to look like Mumbai.
It was beautiful.
And thankfully those scenes they went viral, and now they're asking her when the feature film is coming out, but that's up to her. My door is always open. I think she's has quite a few different books, and she's constantly writing.
Yeah.
So I think it's unsure, like in terms of what book she's focusing on to getting, hopefully adapted into a series versus a feature. But yeah, my door is always open for any people that have these underlying IP. I love adapting so much. So if you have a book that you'd want to get seen cinematically, I'd be more than happy to help you.
Thank you, Radha. One trend that I've seen in streaming is that there's this revolution happening with strong women, especially happening in South Asia. And I've told friends of mine about there's some really good badass police officer women cops that are these kinds of shows and films are being made. That's my personal observation, and I feel like it's kind of a movement that's going on in India. And also I've just been noticing a lot of women producers coming up. I know, Rima, you also worked in Mumbai. Did you just want to comment really quickly? I have one more question, and then I'm going to open it up.
So when I worked in Mumbai, in terms of like adapting IPs, that's largely been something that I've been doing, which is adapting, whether that's international IPs to bringing them to India or making the Indian IPs back in the US. That's pretty much been like my strength. And it's amazing to see how that market is just growing, and rather I would say exploding now, because at the end of it, the way we're creating formats is creating like that structure of what really the storytelling is, and then you're kind of sprucing it up with like culture, and you're bringing in like the stories which are so authentic in its nature. And it's beautiful to see how we're adapting that here as well as adapting that in India, and it's only growing more and more, and the writers are going to get more and more famous as we go along.
So I just wanted to ask if any of you want to share anything that you're working on right now that we should be looking out for, and how we can support you.
Well, our the Ceylon International Film Festival is coming up starting actually this coming Monday, and it's in Santa Barbara, and it's a week-long film festival. If you can, I know it's quite a bit of drive, please join us and see what we are doing and what we are offering. We have an opening ceremony. What we're trying to do is bring the Sri Lankan culture. In our opening ceremony and the closing, we bring a little bit of our Sri Lankan taste to it. So the community loves it, and we would love to invite all of you. If you can join, please join us next week. Thank you.
Is it good food?
Yes.
Thanks for that. We're currently at Starseeds making AI, and I know that's not the hot topic here. You guys are pretty much against me. I'm at no point saying that AI should rule everything we do. It's humans at the end of the day that is programming the machines. So I want us to keep that in mind, and full respect to what's happening in the industry. But yes, my heart definitely has been taken over by AI. I have to say partially. So we are making AI, trailers as well as like short films. So if you guys want to kind of take a quick sneak peek of that, I'm happy to share that, and come and talk to me, and we can help you get your stories out there. I think a lot of producers are not being able to actually get their stories to be made by a Netflix or to be made by a Paramount because they don't see the vision. And I think that's where AI can be used. That's where AI can be used to actually support you to tell those stories, to show them what you are seeing as a director. And that's where I feel like the difference is when we're able to, really use technology in our favor to look at the bigger picture. It doesn't have to be looked at from a smaller lens. If we zoom out a little bit and if we look at it as an enabler, we should be smart enough to use it for what we can actually create magic with. And that's what we do. So if anyone is interested in that, please come and reach out to us, and we're happy to help you create those stories and show them in a way that you would want to probably take it to a Netflix or a Paramount. So that's really the goal.
So I'm making a feature film called Anitya, which means impermanence in Sanskrit. And it's kind of like a cross between Past Lives and Take Shelter, which I'm not sure if you know from Jeff Nichols. And Past Lives is just this beautiful love story, right? So this specific story is inspired by my own truth, which takes place in Illinois as well as in India. And it's just a love story that also kind of grapples with understanding mental health within our diaspora. So it's basically pulling all my truth into this. And I'm hoping to start raising money at the end of this year so that I can be able to shoot it before the end of next year. So any support that I can have to make this would be wonderful.
So I have two documentaries that are on the film festival circuit at the moment. One is a short film about a female team that discovered or kind of worked on creating a COVID-19 vaccine, and so it was led by an Indian American scientist at a pharmaceutical company in Maryland, and she basically built an all-female team, and it's kind of their story fighting against the other big pharmaceutical companies to get this vaccine made. And then I also have another film that's out, which is a feature documentary. It's called The Gas Station Attendant. It's about an immigrant family kind of coming from India to the U.S. and just the story of a daughter looking back on her father's life. And so those two films are out right now, just traveling the festival circuit.
Her feature documentary, Gas Station Attendant, has won so many awards. It's now playing at Doc NYC, but it's very
Thank you so much for this incredible panel. I'm so grateful and honored to have you all here with me and to be here. I'd like to open it up to questions as we wrap up. Does anyone have any questions? Tessa?
I don't have a question, but I do have an observation, and that is, I'm just really touched by the fact that all these films were female-centric, and the issue of, so when I was young, which is a very long time ago, I lived in Florence, Italy, culture, and as a little